Where does my perception begin? From what place do I even come into being? That means I am raising my thought upward. But there is no up there. I can't show you that I'm going up there. Because there is no over there. It's not the physical world. There is no such thing. It's the same thing. You know, like when people pray, they lift their heads up and look up at the sky. Why do they look at the sky? Is the Almighty in the sky? He is everywhere. So it's the same thing when we say, I raise my thought upward. It doesn't mean that we're actually lifting something somewhere in the material world. We are directing ourselves toward the source of life, where He is. There are no places, no time, none of those concepts. A person's thought resides in the rational soul, which comes from higher spiritual roots. A thought has the power to rise up to its source, to cling to the higher light from which it was drawn, because thought and light are one and the same. Imagine when a thought returns from above downward. It's a single process, and this light descends downward, and the power of thought, which draws the light, also draws the collective desire of souls, the Shekhinah. And then the clear light will be drawn and descend to the place where the owner of the thought resides. A thought is like a light that comes to fill a person's lack. Therefore, the kind of thought we're talking about here is not just any random thoughts that run through a person's mind. The Creator's thought governs the entire world. It governs all of us. You can read about this in the first part of the study of the Ten Sefirot, in the inner reflection, where Baal HaSulam writes that this thought is both the driving force through which the Almighty governs, and the force that created everything, and the very reward that will be received at the end of correction, and the very process we are in right now, going through various stages of concealment and developing our vessels. All of this is one thought of the Creator. That's how He defines it. He also defines all of this as the Ten Sefirot. The Ten Sefirot are the active intellect, the thought of the Creator that governs everything. Everything is the Ten Sefirot, and there is nothing else besides them. And we are all within this thought. We need to connect with this thought. Everything we think is only an echo of this one thought that we need to reach. The root from which everything comes, and it comes only from that place where it's not us doing something, but Him. He responds to our questions, to our lack, to our desire. This is what we're talking about here. We withdraw, focusing our attention on some spiritual law that we recently studied. For example, let's read the beginning of the book, The Study of the Ten Sefirot. Before the creation of the beings, there was a simple, infinite light filling all of reality. We reflect on this topic, trying to understand and realize it. What did the great Kabbalist Isaac Luria Ashkenazi, whom everyone calls the Ari, want to tell us with this? With the help of our imagination, we picture the world of infinity. It envelopes us, and we see no end or boundary to the light, the pleasure, the happiness that come from the Creator. There is nothing but the Creator and His will. It's as if we are in a mother's womb, experiencing complete dissolution in the higher power. We need to feel ourselves like clay in the hands of a master. He can shape us any way He wants, and I completely surrender myself to Him, making no decisions on my own. I am a drop in the ocean of infinity, carried by the current of the higher power. There is nothing but the Creator. The absence of thoughts is the result of the first two stages. Complete calm, silence in the mind, it is inactive. Contemplation happens in a very relaxed state. Don't try to move as you do in the physical world, and don't try to understand anything either. Don't worry if it seems like you haven't achieved the desired result, just relax. Right now, you are actually getting it. The result of all your work is the contemplation itself. A person does things in everyday life, but in contemplation, they reap the rewards. Because in contemplation, nothing can be changed anymore. When you enter the king's chambers, don't try to put yourself in order. Do that beforehand. Information flows on its own, without any inattention. You can help yourself with your breathing. Relax as you inhale. Draw in the light and exhale effortlessly. A sense of free flow is created in your mind, as if something is passing through you as you exhale. And everyone can perceive this in their own way. Some people hear sounds, voices, letters, thoughts, others see images or shimmering colors. So it's impossible to say exactly, because everyone is developed differently, at their own level, with their own vessels. Pay attention to the signs you receive. It's similar to a dream, where a person receives signals. They see all sorts of symbols, signs, maybe even sensations or thoughts. You need to know how to interpret them correctly. If a person pays attention to this, they'll notice that some signs are good, while others are warnings, and you need to be careful. What are they trying to tell you through these signs? Because you should observe and study what is being hinted to you about something in your personal relationships by the Creator. You need to strive to feel. This isn't just meditation where you're constantly observing, sort of detached. We don't practice that kind of meditation. It can only be used as a tool, something we make use of. Our meditation is a prayerful state, so in prayer a person should communicate with the Creator. These things come from above. There are no boundaries. You don't need to be rational at that moment. Again, just be aware of where you are. I'm not telling you to start entering a prophetic state in the middle of the city or in a supermarket. But if you do enter such states, find solitude, so you don't need to be in front of people at that time. And you won't be able to function normally around people, because your negative side will start to throw you off with thoughts like, what do people think about me? Am I acting normal? Am I being adequate? That will only get in your way. That's why it's better to be alone in such states. You enter these states well, it even reaches your physical body. You might cry, taste things, you might even suddenly feel like you're flying. They say Rabbi Chaim Vital used to fly during prayer. He didn't even know it himself. People would tell him about it afterward, later on, when a person reaches higher levels. Even the act of studying itself becomes a Yehuda meditation, a connection to the souls of the righteous who wrote these texts. If the seeker has the right vessels of perception, then through the text itself, they literally begin to interact with the higher worlds. It's about working with imagination, visualizing the material you've studied. You need to develop the powers of your inner world. One of these is imagination, which allows us to picture ourselves standing on the levels of those righteous people whose books we are studying. We need to imagine ourselves in the roles of the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal HaSulam. We can picture ourselves on the levels of these righteous ones, as if we are already there. We need to actually try to do what these levels do. Engage your imagination and visualization while studying. A person reads an exciting story, associating themselves with the main character, becoming that character for a while. It's the same for us. When we study about spiritual levels, a person must actively do all this during and after studying, otherwise they won't reach the goal. They'll just be reading texts. To reach a state of no thought. It's important to understand what this concept of no thought means. When a person is able to catch the contact with the place from which a thought arises, the place where a thought appears in their consciousness, that's where their perception begins. Here, they do nothing, everything comes from above. It's not them answering their own questions, but rather, the answers come to them, and they clearly see this, because they deeply desire to connect with the higher. We're not interested in asking ourselves questions and answering them on our own. We desire a living connection with the Creator, with the soul of a righteous person who is in the spiritual world. We need to patiently wait for the answer to come not from our own mind, and not be satisfied with thoughts that arise from our personal initiative. This is a state when a person touches the very point where their thoughts begin, and this is higher than the place where the thought has already developed, has turned into reflection, and there it is only being drawn from the source. Everyone must find this place within themselves, in their own consciousness, on their own. Because it is impossible to point it out. It's impossible to show you where exactly that place is from which your thought begins. That's why without personal work, without spiritual experience, nothing will happen. When you touch this point, you will see that the thoughts have disappeared. Because that's where thoughts stop. Receive information from above as an answer to a question. This should happen effortlessly on its own. You shouldn't try to influence it with your own efforts, as if you are the one doing it. There should be a real sense that the answer was given from above. And there's also a mistake people make when they start telling the Almighty how He should answer them. So don't expect the answer to come in the form your imagination, desires, or preconceived opinions and stereotypes have drawn for you. What helps is what you do before the Yehuda meditations. Everything you do before meditation prepares you for the meditation itself. What needs to be done? You need to practice self-nullification. This is a very important quality, to nullify yourself. You can make these transitions many times a day, and they can be brief, not necessarily deep or involving some kind of super intense meditation. But with any action, once you've done it, finished it, you sit down and thank the Creator. I didn't do anything. The Creator did everything. Thank you for doing this. And that's how you shift your focus to the idea that I didn't do anything. The Creator did everything. But this should happen after the actions, after you've done something, after you've achieved a result. It's after that when you need to make this shift. You need to trust the Creator and give him the opportunity to respond however he wishes.